seeking to overthrow Libya's leader, Muammar Gaddafi. Latest reports from Western Libya say anti-government forces are preparing for a counter-offensive by troops loyal to Gaddafi in the city of AlJazeera, just 50 kilometres west of Tripoli. On the diplomatic front, the UN Security Council has unanimously backed sanctions on Gaddafi and his inner circle, along with an arms embargo. Now, one of the reasons world leaders can be more critical of the Libyan regime is that their citizens are finally leaving the country. But organising their evacuations is far from easy. Harry Smith has the details of one rescue mission by the British military.
British oil workers arriving in Malta after being rescued in a military operation shrouded in secrecy. Details are still sketchy, but it's believed 2 British Air Force transport planes entered Libyan airspace without permission. The British refused to reveal exact locations, but it's believed an airfield at Nafura was used to rescue 150 stranded oil workers, who were then flown to safety in Malta.
There was scheduled to be 65, but in the end there was about 130 got on.
Really?
Yeah.
And
we were sitting in the aisles. It's very cramped, but we were just glad to be out of there and getting on the flights.
The British, along with other governments, have also sent warships to Tripoli and Benghazi in attempts to bring out their citizens. But it's thought more rescue missions will be needed to airlift hundreds more oil workers stranded in the south.
As I said, there's still people in the desert, so I can't say too much. I can't say where I came from, etc., etc. Because the guys down there are still doing an excellent job to gather all the guys together and get them evacuated.
The Foreign Office here in London has come in for severe criticism for what's perceived to be its slow response to the plight of Britons trapped in Libya. An official I spoke to a short time ago declined to comment on this latest rescue mission, but said they remain deeply concerned for the plight of other Britons trapped in remote areas of Libya. Harry Smith, Al Jazeera, London.
Well, unrest continues in many parts of the Middle East, of course. At least 2 people have been shot dead by Omani police on Sunday, according to witnesses in Sohar. Tear gas was used on demonstrators in the industrial city. Witnesses say at least 1,000 people had gathered demanding political reform. The military are now moving in to secure the area. In Yemen, the President Ali Abdullah Saleh has addressed a meeting of his army generals as he tries to shore up his presidency. Saleh vowed to defend the unity of the country to the last drop of blood. Hashim Albra is in Sana'a.
Remaining defiant, President Saleh telling his army officers that Yemen is in danger of disintegration and that they should fight for its unity.
We have vowed to defend the republican system, the unity and safety of the republic till the last drop of our blood, and this vow stands now. There is an attempt to split the country into north and south.
The president was referring to his arch rivals, secessionists asking the south to break away from the north, and the Houthi rebels in their ongoing battle against the government for greater autonomy in their region.
This isn't the first time that the President has met his army generals since the start of the crisis in the country. But his statements tell a great deal about his confusion, and it's clear that he has been inspired by Gaddafi's speeches.
But thousands of young Yemenis who have taken to the streets across the country have totally different demands. The departure of the regime. Demands waved off by Saleh's ruling party as illegitimate.
It won't be an Egyptian-style change. It won't be a Tunisian type of change. But unfortunately, if it goes to become very close to what's happening now in Libya, then I don't by any means rule out the possibility of an international and regional intervention here.
For these protesters, the movement has come a long way, inspired many Yemenis and made sacrifices that calls for dialogue by the government are too late. But if the president is determined to cling to power, the opposition and the anti-government protesters say they will muster more men here in the capital and across the country to put an end to what they describe as an autocratic regime. Hashim Al-Barra, Al Jazeera, Sana'a.
Now, aides for the Arab League Secretary General Amr Moussa have confirmed he intends to run for Egyptian president. The Egyptian state news agency made the announcement through its text message service on Sunday. Moussa's office says he intends to stand, but his candidacy won't be official until proposed constitutional changes are enacted. Meanwhile, Egypt's former Interior Minister Habib Adadli is to appear before a criminal court accused of money laundering. The hearing's set for March the 5th. If it goes ahead, he'll be the first person from the regime of the ousted President Hosni Mubarak to face charges. He was arrested 10 days ago. And the Egyptian Stock Exchange is set to reopen on Tuesday. It's been shut since January the 27th. Well, Egypt is eagerly wanting to regain its position as a major tourist destination. The sector's been crippled by the violence that led to the 18-day revolution. Tourism accounts for 11% of Egypt's struggling economy. 1 in 8 jobs depend on it. But as Andrew Simmons reports from Luxor, there are no signs yet of tourists returning.
The waters of the Nile, a voyage through ancient history that's always attracted foreigners. Not now. Egypt's revolution won new freedoms, but its tourism industry is still in shackles. No visitors, no business. Yet nearly everyone living and working here in Luxor depends on tourism. If things were normal, these cruise ships would be crammed with holidaymakers plying along the Nile. Instead, they're all at anchor, as far as the eye can see, and there isn't a tourist in sight. Hotels have single-figure occupancy. Most of their staff sent home. Restaurants are either closed or struggling to stay open. Yet it's peaceful here, even though soldiers maintain a presence, bored with little to do. Egypt's ancient attractions stand proud with no crowds. Last year, more than 14.5 million foreigners came to see them. Now, at any time of day, you're pushed to find a few, and most of them are Egyptians.
But there's something very interesting about the column here for Amenhotep III, about 22 meters high.
The only tour guide at Karnak says it's getting near breaking point.
You work day by day. Sometimes have a job, sometimes no job. But now, no any job. For the stay at home, we spend from our pocket all the money. Maybe one day, the money is finished.
The Valley of the Kings, it should be 10,000 tourists a day. Instead, Mustafa El-Gindi, former opposition member of parliament and one of the revolution's key players, is able to give a rare private viewing of King Tutankhamun's tomb. Mr. El-Gindi says if the economy is to be revived, the land of the pharaohs needs tourists to heed his appeal.
We are suffering, definitely we are suffering, but they are ready to come. We need you now to tell the whole world that you respect Egypt, that you support the revolution in Egypt, and you are here to support the economy of this country.
Tour companies are slowly responding and the country is ready. Next month should see an upturn, but it has to be big if the new Egypt is to get what it needs, the first step in reviving its economy. Andrew Simmons, Al Jazeera, Luxor, Egypt.
India's finance minister presents the country's budget on Monday and is expected to address rising anger over food supplies. While millions go hungry, some food supplies rot in warehouses. It's a situation that's led to protests and investigations, but few solutions. Perna Suri has the story from New Delhi.
United in their demand, women from all over India protesting against rising food prices.
It's getting more difficult to raise our families. Prices of rice, potatoes, onion, everything has gone up. We can't afford to pay this much for the basics.
This anger, simmering for many months, has now spilled onto the streets. Inflation in this country touched 18% last year, and high food prices have hit people right across India. But part of the problem, experts say, lies here. India's agricultural system hasn't been modernized in years, and its farmers are given little incentives. Farmer Satveer Singh prepares his field for the next season's crops. But he says he's received little support from the government.
I work on my fields because it's my life. But I never get fertilizers, power or water on time. This really affects my production.
Those who can sell their produce face another hurdle. While India has enough grain to feed its people, What it lacks is a proper distribution system. Under the current system, stockpiled wheat sits mouldering, sometimes for years. A new system would enable it to get to the people that need it the most during times of high demand. This is where the Indian government stores the grains it buys from its farmers. But as you can see, most of the grains have been lying outside and they've been damaged by the weather. Now, officials here tell me that this produce has been lying here since the past 3 years and they can't sell it to the people outside. And at a time when rising food costs is a big concern for the people in this country, it seems all of this produce is just going to a total waste. Experts say long-needed agricultural reforms are vital if the current hardship is to be eased.
Last agricultural revolution took place in the mid-60s. Now you require a second revolution of building infrastructure to store food grains and be able to deliver them in the same condition in which they were procured. The government has done nothing of that sort.
So while policymakers debate on how best to tackle rising prices, people hope their voice will now force the government to act. Prerna Suri, AlJazeera, New Delhi.
And finally, stand by for a bit of glitz and glamour. We're just hours away from the annual Academy Awards in Hollywood. Outside the Kodak Theatre in Los Angeles, the traditional red carpet is ready for the arrival of A-list talent. Now, this is one of TV's most watched events. Organisers are trying to attract a younger audience this year, with the actors James Franco and Anne Hathaway hosting the all-important Oscars show. 10 films have been nominated for Best Picture, including King's Speech, Social Network and Inception. And for more on all the day's news, switch to our website, aljazeera.net/English. Let's take you through the headlines here on Al Jazeera. Fresh fighting has broken out in the Tunisian capital, Tunis. Police fired tear gas and warning shots in the capital to disperse crowds on a third consecutive day of violence. 3 people have been killed and several others wounded in clashes between security forces and demonstrators since Friday. Well, the violence comes as Mohamed Ghannouchi announces he's stepping down as Prime Minister. He had planned to guide the country to elections in July after President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali was deposed last month. The US Secretary of State says Washington is prepared to offer any kind of assistance to Libyans seeking to overthrow Libya's leader Muammar Gaddafi. Latest reports from western Libya say anti-government forces are preparing for a counter-offensive by troops loyal to Muammar Gaddafi in the city of Azawiyah. It's just 50 kilometers west of the capital Tripoli. Libya's third largest city, Misrata, is reportedly also in opposition hands. Witnesses say tanks are moving towards the western city. Aides for the Arab League Secretary-General Amr Moussa have confirmed he does intend to run for Egyptian president. The Egyptian state news agency made the announcement through its text message service on Sunday. His office says he intends to stand, but his candidacy won't be official until proposed constitutional changes are made. Unrest continues in many parts of the Middle East. At least 2 people have been shot dead by Omani police on Sunday, according to witnesses in Sohar. Tear gas was also used on the demonstrators in the industrial city. Witnesses say at least 1,000 people had gathered demanding political reform. The military are now securing the area. Heavily armed police have broken up a pro-democracy protest in Hong Kong. The activists were responding to an online campaign urging protests against Beijing in major Chinese cities. They tried to plant jasmine outside the Chinese liaison office on Sunday, the flower symbolic of the uprisings across the Middle East. And 6 people have been killed in the Democratic Republic of Congo during an attempted attack on the president's residence. The Central African nation's information minister says a group of heavily armed men tried to storm the home in the capital Kinshasa on Sunday, but was stopped at a roadblock. Authorities are calling it a failed coup attempt. Those are the headlines. I'm back at the top of the hour. Inside Story is next.
Growing concerns over food shortages and lack of medical supplies in Libya as violence escalates. Just what is the scale of the humanitarian crisis in Libya and what's being done about it? And could this be part of Muammar Gaddafi's desperate efforts to cling to power? This is Inside Story.